morning, everyone. Thanks for starting your day with us. This is The Market. I'm Avan Dibash, and joining me is Anisha Jain. And yes, indeed, the recovery on D Street is pretty evident. So let's just start off the show by giving you a sense as to how things transpired in yesterday's trading session. It continues to remain very heavy on earnings, but you had the index at least breaking out of that very dull, quiet range that we've been confined to over the past multiple weeks, and finally above the 17,700 mark in trade. And I think that all the credit really goes to those heavyweights in trade, because they did a lot of the heavy lifting. So names like ICICI Bank, you had Ultratech Cement, HDFC, for instance, the entire HDFC cluster of stocks, as well as something like Hindalco, JSW Steel, Reliance Industries, not to mention, they were all at the forefront in yesterday's trade. So yes, it seems like with the kind of rollover data on the Nifty Bank at about 28% and on the Nifty at about 22%, that short covering trend is pretty evident in the markets, and that the next resistance level stands at about 17,900 on the frontline index. When it comes to the Nifty Bank as well, the resistance levels close to 43,000 is what we're looking at, and a support at close to 42,300 on the Nifty Bank index. In terms of the kind of liquidity that we've been facing over the past many days, the FII sell figure, well, that doesn't seem to have abated. So yesterday as well, we did go in with a sell figure, or minute as it may be, the FIIs continue, Anisha, to remain net sellers.
Oh, well, yes, but as you pointed out, the key talking point in the market is the fact that it's a very, very earnings-heavy week. As we were pointing out earlier, 18% of the Nifty reports its earnings. And for today itself, you have Bajaj Auto, and then you have the FMCG majors like Tata Consumer as well as Nestle that will come out with earnings. Let me quickly talk about Bajaj Auto first. The stock is sitting at 52-week high levels. Sequentially, it is expected there is going to be a decline because the volumes of exports has been a bit tepid. But if you look at the revenue profile, it's expected to dip almost 10% on a sequential basis. EBITDA margin will really hold the key, so let's watch out for that number. If it comes around that 18.7% mark, that should be okay for the street, but anything below 18.5% might worry the street. And then the profitability is expected to dip by around 5%, but the commentary regarding margins going forward as well as new launches will really hold the key. For Tata Consumers, the stock was definitely quite excited ahead of its earnings today, so stock was up 4% yesterday. The street is penciling in a growth of almost 10 to 11%. As far as top line is concerned, and the double-digit growth is likely to be led by the India business, so that will really hold the key. Shifting focus to Nestle as well, the expectations continue to be a bit tepid in the sense that revenue is expected to jump up by around 11%, but again the margin picture will be important, because if the margin comes around that 26% mark, that will be good. For 22.6% mark, that will be okay, but anything below 22% will not be taken well, because remember, inflationary pressure has been high, but the street is talking about how the worst is over, and we are watching out for those indications in the financials as well, that the inflation is up, or rather the worst of inflation is over. Volume growth seen at around 3 to 4%, so lots to watch out for. And of course, there is also a lot of action in the primary market as well. Mankind IPO, one of the large ones in recent times, opens today.
Absolutely. So all eyes on that. Remember, it's opening for subscription, and the issue is worth close to 4,326 crore rupees. It's going to remain for bidding, open for bidding. This is going to be until the 27th of April. Remember, they have over 36 brands, Manforce, Prega News, and the IPO price band. There you have it on your screens, 1,026 to 1,080 per equity share. Remember, it's a complete OFS in nature. It did make its debut in the grey market before hitting the primary market, and of course we'll be watching out for that very closely. So that's Mankind Pharma for you. You do have the promoters, who are Ramesh and Rajiv Janeja. They are selling close to 1 crore shares, and now the promoter holding in the company is going to reduce to 76% post the issue, with investors selling close to 3 crore shares, or about 3,245 crores in terms of value. So it's a domestic business, and it's the second largest, incidentally, in terms of its volumes as well for FY22, operating primarily in pharma as well as healthcare products. In terms of financials as well, then for FY22, revenues stood at about 7,718 crores, with margins at about 25.8%. They have short-term debt of about 850 crores. But let's also just take a quick check-in as to how the global markets have shaped up overnight and the kind of handover that we have from Wall Street as well as from Asia. Well, it's safe to say that it was a fairly tempered session. You had tech-heavy Nasdaq that slipped about 0.2%. The Dow Jones was in the green, but very mildly, nothing to really shout home about, and ditto for the S&P 500. Today, I think all the attention is going to be on a lot of the tech-heavy names like Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, all set to announce their quarterly numbers. So we're waiting those tech earnings today. And you've got the Asian markets as well, largely lower, pretty much taking cues from Wall Street, barring the Nikkei. They are under pressure primarily in trade. And the SGX Nifty yet again indicating, Anisha, a pretty flat start around the 17,778 mark today.
Oh, well, yes, a lot of earnings to track globally as well, but then the commentary will also be important because come next week, there is the US Fed meeting on February 3rd, or rather May 3rd, and the expectation is that 90% of the people are expecting there is going to be a rate hike. But what are the other commentary coming in from people across the globe? Let's go across to my colleague Ankita to find out just that. Hi, Ankita.
Good morning to you, Anisha and Avan. Yes, let's quickly look at the global commentary that's coming in. First up is Mohammed Al-Aryan, who says that even though the equity markets are really coming, it is the bond markets that is really confusing for now. He says that the bond market recognizes that there is a lot of uncertainty and you don't want to commit fully to the equity markets until we really figure out things that we do not know. So that's the word coming in from Mohammed Al-Aryan. And let's go across to what's happening in the European markets now. We all know that the ECB is going to come out with its rate hike policy on the 4th of May, and the market is penciling in 25 basis rate hike as opposed to a 50 bips rate hike. On the back of that, the ECB's Governor Council member and Bank of France head Francis Villeroy said that there may be a need for more rate hikes, and ECB will hold the rates at the peak for as long as it is needed. The underlying inflation risk being more persistent, rate hikes should be limited in size and in number. And also commenting on the same, we had Irish ECB policymaker Gabriel McLaugh, who also said that it is too early for ECB, to start planning a pause in the monetary policy tightening. So that's the word coming in from ECB a week before their policy meet on the 4th of May. Now let's look at back home in Asia. Bank of Japan chief says that he wants a strong inflation before tweaking the yield control policy. BOJ governor said that the central bank's inflation forecast must be quite strong and close to a good 2% in the coming year to consider tweaking the yield curve control. Now, as of now, at present, the trend inflation is below 2%. So they must maintain a monetary easing. But when the trend inflation is projected to reach 2%, the BOJ must normalize the monetary policy. That's what the governor had to say.